This tutorial is going to focus on regulation and control in living things. Every living thing has to be able to survive successfully in the environment that it lives in. And to be able to survive successfully, that living thing needs to be able to take in information from its environment. I'll just do this in general terms. So the organism, some kind of living, can be a plant, can be animal, bacteria, whatever. That living thing needs to be able to take in various bits of important information about what's going on in its world, where there's food, where there's water, where there's threats, changes in temperature, the ability to find space and shelter. All this information needs to be absorbed by a living thing if it's going to successfully survive. And then that living thing then needs to respond appropriately to be able to survive in that environment. So it needs to gather information and then it needs to be able to respond. So for a living thing to be able to do this and survive successfully, then it must have various systems in place to help it to do this. This ability of a living thing to be able to read information from the environment and then to respond appropriately to enable its own survival, this ability to control by and large its inner body workings, is referred to as homeostasis. And a working definition of homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant internal environment. And it's worth just looking at this for a moment. Here's our little animal. I know it's very cute. I can hear the laughing now. But let's take our little animal for a moment. Outside the animal, out here, is generally referred to as its external environment. And inside the animal, in its cells and tissues that make it up. So the environment inside the animal is generally referred to as its internal environment. Now there are cases where the external environment can be brought inside the animal. We won't get into that here. But essentially the cells, the tissues, the blood of an animal is its internal environment. And its ability to, some animals can regulate this internal environment very well despite what's happening out here in the external environment. And its ability to regulate this internal environment can help many animals to survive. Some animals and plants can't do this all that well, but they have other ways of managing to survive. So there are a couple of different ways that animals and plants can do this in general. We're just going to look at one in particular here. And it follows a particular model called the stimulus response model. So let's have a look at that. So the stimulus response model. Whoops. Now the stimulus response model looks something like this. An organism, a living thing, can detect a stimulus. A stimulus is just some variable out there in the environment. It could be temperature, it could be the level of a gas, it could be a visual threat like a predator, it could be movement, it could be the presence of food, it could be water. It's something that actually stimulates the senses of an organism, a plant or an animal. So a stimulus is detected by receptors of some kind in an animal or plant. And there are the five main receptors, although there are many others in animals. But eyes are a receptor, the ability to see something. Our ears are receptors. Our tongues are receptors. So we have the ability to receive information about things we can see, things we can hear, things we can taste, things we can smell, things we can touch. And there are other receptors inside the body that can pick up concentrations of gases and temperature and so on. So stimulus from the external environment can be detected by receptors. The receptors send messages to organs or tissues called effectors. An effector is some part of the body that's capable of doing something in response to a stimulus. So it could be a muscle, could be a gland. And then the effectors bring about some kind of response. So the animal or plant does something as a response to the original stimulus. The messages between the receptors and the effectors usually take one of two forms, or sometimes both. They can it can be nerves, so using the nervous system, or it could be chemical messengers such as hormones. So this is what they call the stimulus response model, and it helps organisms to respond to their environment appropriately and to survive. To quickly finish off this tutorial, let's just focus on a few things that animals or plants would have to respond to appropriately survive. What kind of stimuli? So obviously animals would want to be able to detect food so that they can eat. They'd want to be able to detect water. So these are various stimuli in the environment. Food, water. They would want to be able to detect predators. Their body would want to be able to detect how much oxygen, perhaps, and carbon dioxide is present in their body, so that they can regulate their energy producing mechanisms. They might want to be able to detect temperature. So if it gets too cold, they can respond appropriately. If it gets too hot, they can respond appropriately. You might be able to pause this and think of other things in the environment of an animal or plant that they would want to be able to detect so that they could respond appropriately. So we'll leave that particular tutorial there, and we'll look at how nervous systems and hormone systems work in more detail in another tutorial.